Kathleen.
I'm Rebecca.
I'm Sheila.
And I'm Carrie. And today on the SOAR Show, we have 3 published writers. And if you've been thinking about writing a book, get your pen and paper ready, because we're going to be giving you tips and helpful answers to your questions and hints about how to write one. We've got great authors with us. We've got Joe Hafner, we've got Michelle Moore, and we've got our very own Rebeccca Johns-Wommack.
Yay.
But first, coffee cups. Joe, our special guest, what you got?
What you got?
I have a cup from the Ronald Reagan Library.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Did you visit?
Yes, I did visit it.
Oh, very good.
And I have that because I love America. America's awesome. And because Ronald Reagan is a great example of you should always be learning and changing and growing throughout your life.
Amen, I agree.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
What you got, Kathleen?
Okay, well, mine's not that profound, but I have my fabulous Game of Thrones insulated mug because I'm at iced coffee season right here.
That was a good idea.
Great idea,
Especially sitting here on the comfy couch. Mine says best day ever, and I love this cup because I think it works for the morning and night, because you can wake up and say it's going to be the best day ever, and at night you can fill it with something else and say it was the best day ever.
Love that.
Mine is a plain white coffee cup because I felt like it went perfectly with our theme today, that, you know what, life is just a blank pages, a book of blank pages for you to write your own story. You might not even want to publish it, but just write.
Get it out.
Absolutely.
Get it out.
Absolutely. That's
I like
cleansing
that.
and helpful.
What you got, Sheila?
Well, based on our topic, mine said everyone is entitled to my opinion. And oftentimes, books are just that. They're the author's opinion. And so this felt very appropriate today.
It is. I
Yeah,
like that.
very
good.
cool. What about you,
That's
Michelle?
good. Well, mine was actually inspired really just by, with everything going on with how I'm called to really educate and teach. And so mine says real estate selling professional. It is the logo. It has the logo on it for my national designation for what I teach for real estate agents. And so it's the RESP. So when agents
perfect.
actually come to the class and they graduate, they get their certificate, they get a number of freebies and some nice gifts, but this is one of those gifts.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
exciting.
that's
Remind
great.
me
Well,
of
we'll
what
come
I'm
just for the
taking
coffee mug, right, girls?
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so the whole thing is, how do you write a book? How do you get started? A lot of people want to be authors. So, Joe, what do you want to start off telling us? Like, what motivated you to write it, and how'd you get started? What put your pen to paper?
Writing is something that I've always done. It's something that I'm driven to do. That's part of who I am. And I've always written. When I was in first grade, I remember I helped start a newspaper at my grammar school. You know,
Oh, wow.
so I've always written. I've always written short stories. And then eventually, I started writing a short story once in my 20s, and it started turning into a longer one. And it became the first novel that I wrote. Of course, the first 2 novels I wrote, I didn't publish those because they weren't very good.
Yeah.
But then maybe 5 years ago, I decided it was time that I was wasting that talent that God's given me. And I decided I was going to write a novel in a year. So I just I came up with my concept, and then I started going to my office every evening and just putting it all together, and then a year later I had the first draft of the novel.
I love what you said about you didn't want to let go of the gift that God gave you.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's fabulous, and so many people will just kind of put that on a shelf.
Well, I think God puts potential in everybody,
Exactly.
and some people live it out and allow that to flourish, and other people, they're scared to see what happens if they go after it.
You're exactly right.
And life's
Yeah.
too short not to go after it.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, there's a lot of buried gifts that no one ever used
Amen.
in the graveyard.
Yeah.
No one ever went
So
for
good.
it.
So
Right?
good.
What about you, Michelle?
Well, for me, I think, just like Joe was saying, there are a lot of talents that we get. I think God also is looking for someone who will be obedient. And so sometimes we get called. We know there are things that God is leading us to do. Unlike Joe, I was not a writer. In school, I actually, went to MTSU here in Murfreesboro. And I was a computer science major. And in college, though, I had to take one remedial course, and it was creative writing. So I was great when it came to math or computer code, but when it came to writing a story or a paragraph or whatever, that was totally not me. So to now be a published author, an award-winning published author, is just amazing, because that just had to be all God. But for me, it wasn't as disciplined or as easy as maybe what Joe's story was. It was more about saying yes to God and answering the call that He was, putting on me to step forward and and to share the things he
What
wanted.
about you?
These awesome authors have written more than one book. I've only written one.
Which is more than any of us have written.
And it was actually a textbook, and it's called Concepts in Fitness, A Balanced Approach to Health. I didn't want to write a book. I was made to write a book because when you are a tenure track professor, it's called publish or perish. You either write a book or you don't get tenure. So I was forced to write a textbook. So I kind of went at it kicking and screaming. I'm not going to kid you, but then I really got into it and realized that, and I was a professor at MTSU, and we needed a textbook that actually taught basic concepts in fitness and how do you teach teachers how to teach that. So it's not only just health and wellness, but how do you teach everyday people how to incorporate health and wellness into their lives. So it was a textbook that was used at MTSU.
That's good.
That's
So I
fantastic.
have a question. Well, for all of y'all, how much research? What do you do to get started in the process of writing your books? Was it a long process of research? Did you already have your topic? How did you get started?
Well, first of all,
That's a good question.
but what books have you written, Joe? And I think that probably is
I've-
important as to whether it's fiction or whether it's an educational book, right?
I've written both fiction and nonfiction. I've written I co-authored 2 real estate. By co-authored, I mean they wanted the person whose picture's on the cover, and I wrote it for them, basically. So I co-authored one called Sell It Yourself, about how to sell a home without an agent. And then I wrote another one called Real Wealth by Investing in Real Estate. So those basically, writing a nonfiction is way different than writing a fiction.
Sure.
Nonfiction, you do an outline, you figure out what your topics are going to be, you figure out how it's going to all lay out and come together, and then you sit down and write it. And like, for instance, we were on a deadline with this one. I wrote this one in 3 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
So then there's my novel, which
We don't want you to advertise that one because we're real estate agents.
well,
Don't sell it
we can talk
yourself.
about that later.
It's called Don't Sell It Yourself.
So this one, Rooster's Leap, which is my novel that I wrote and published in 2017. This is more just technical stuff. This is more like a labor of love. This is me and the art that I do in creating something. This was more, I had a general idea of what I was going to write, and I just had the arc of the story kind of figured out, and then I kind of filled it in as I went. And this kind of, for me at least, it kind of changes as you work through it. The creative process,
Yeah,
you start
makes
writing
sense.
it, and you develop a character, and then something happens that you were going to have happen to that character, and you say something like, well, that character wouldn't act that way. And you have to change things around with that. So
Right.
this is more art, whereas the other is more science.
And how long did it take you to write that book, start to finish?
This I wrote in a year, just working,
That's amazing.
going
It
and
is
writing
amazing.
for maybe 2 to 5 hours a day,
Wow.
working on that, and then it
Lot
took
of
a year to
dedication.
revise it.
So
Lots
you
of
were to
dedication.
revise it. So it was a 2-year process for you.
Yeah, with a year in between, because it kind of sat around for a while before I
So
got
it's a
to
new
it.
release then.
Well,
long
you
has it been
kind of got back to it, and it was like reading it again for the first time in some ways.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, yeah.
the editing process, it was way longer than, it's still long for a novel, but the editing process chopped a lot of stuff out there. I was fortunate that I had a really good editor
Good.
who wasn't afraid to hurt my feelings and tell me the things I needed to hear.
Well, I
That's
was
an
going to
important
ask,
part.
how do you connect when you do want to write a book and you do spend a year? Then how do you connect with the publisher? How does that step happen?
Well, there are a couple of different ways that you can actually publish a book. And I do a writing conference in January, every January. This coming up to January will be the 7th year in a row. And we cover like how to actually write and publish a book, and how that looks like. But there are people that I've met that have submitted book proposals to 30 different publishers. So I have a publishing deal, with Abandonment to Forgiveness, but then I self-published Selling Simplified. And so it's 55 fast tips to jumpstart your real estate business. And so it's interesting though, because, obviously when you self-publish a book, you have all the control. I picked the shade of blue, the fonts, everything. You pick everything, which can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. And so there's so many different options out there. It used to be 10 years ago, if you think about it, the publishing industry, you either got a publishing deal or nothing. So like I said, I had a vision, and I just, God showed me it was going to be 3 colors, and blue was in the middle, and black, it was a business book, and so I was like, it needs to be blue, and there were some other things, but at the end of the day, though, you've got to do research and figure out, like, what does a business book look like, and make sure that your book looks like one. I've seen some really great self-published books, and I've seen some horrible self-published books.
Right. So that's a whole aspect of it as well.
And I'm so glad you pointed that out. We're in a whole different day and age now. That 10 years ago, you couldn't just go and pursue this yourself. Because my book was published in 2003.
Yeah.
So way beyond 10 years ago. I think that's an excellent point.
And how long did it take you to do this?
About a year.
About a year.
It took about a year.
So many things nowadays with, like, people who want to be singers and do albums. You just have so many avenues now to publish it and get it out there
that's
yourself.
A blessing.
Yes.
So you said something to me, Joe, that I think I've tried. Not tried. I'm working on a book. Not tried. I will get it done. But is that chaotic thing in your head where, like you said, you get to this point and you realize that doesn't work because of what I said 3 chapters ago. And so I think that's probably the point where people give up.
One technique that you can use is, if you're writing fiction, is you write the backstory for your characters. You tell their story, like, here's who they are, here's where they grew up, here's what their formative years were like, and you basically write like a short story about each character.
Oh, that makes sense.
So then you've got background and then some of that material makes its way into the book because you're pulling from it.
Right.
But a lot of it is just background stuff that you use, that you keep to keep up with the character. Then also you got to take notes. I had basically a card for each chapter that had some details about each chapter, so that if I did do something or I changed what I was working on, I could say, oh, I need to find out when this scene happened. And I'd have to go back through my cards because, when you have 50, 60 chapters, you don't remember what happened in what chapter.
Oh, that's a good idea, too. So note cards
chapter,
about special events that you might be going to be tying back into.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good point. How'd y'all come up with your titles for your books?
For me, I like alliteration. My name's Michelle Moore, and so I knew it was going to be selling was going to be the first word because of Amazon. Amazon is the biggest bookseller in the world, so when someone goes in and does a search for books on selling, I wanted my book to pop up. Also, you got to think about, just from a strategic place, because that is such a great place that sells so many books, is that I wanted the title, that middle part, to shine and be able to see in a thumbprint, thumbnail, and so you can read it in a thumbnail on Amazon. So there's some strategic with that as well. So
I see the placement of the word on the cover.
Yes,
to make sure it's in the thumbnail.
Yeah, or big enough that you could even see it.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
true.
So there's a lot of stuff that goes into the cover design. And you have to tell people it's jumpstart your real estate business, because in sales, like any sales, including book sales, you have to think about confused minds say no. So people are going to pick up this book and go, well, is this for me? And if you're a real estate agent, it's absolutely for you.
I agree. And my thought is, too, just sitting here listening to the three of you talk about this, if you do have an interest in writing a book, surround yourself with people that can help you with that. Attend Michelle's classes. Talk to people like Joe and like Rebeccca, who've been there and done this.
Yeah.
They'll be more than happy to help you and share tips and kind of guide you along the path to getting this started the right way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very
Love that.
good. And
What other
I
questions
think,
do we have?
I think you make a good point about being called to it. So if you're going to write a book, the best way I think to be successful is to write something you're passionate about. And think
Absolutely.
about what would you want to read, and then write that.
Yep.
Right? What are you looking for that you can't find on the shelves? What's passionate for you? Because there's nothing better than listening to someone tell a story that they're passionate about, or reading something someone wrote that they're passionate about.
Yep. Everybody's
Right?
got a clean slate.
Yeah. Anything else y'all want to tell somebody that's out there going, I want to do it, but I'm scared. I'm scared.
Just do it scared.
Do it scared.
There you
Oh,
You
like
can be
that.
scared.
Do it scared.
Joe,
Y'all
that's a
know my
t-shirt.
advice.
All day long.
Put on the ball sack. Grab it by the sack and go with it.
Just start writing. I mean, when we look at schoolwork, remember the free thinking, where you just write what comes to mind, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, let me tell you this
Snippets.
cute story. So, we have homeless people in Nashville. Yesterday I was
And
walking
Murfreesboro.
in Murfreesboro. I was walking down the sidewalk, and everyone's trying to get clever with their homeless signs downtown. I don't know if y'all have read any of them. They'll go, I'm honest, I need a drink, or hookers are expensive. I need money. I mean, seriously. That's what
yeah.
some of the
Yeah,
signs
they're-
say.
didn't know
I
that.
walked past this girl sitting down, and she looked like she was about 16 or 17. And I walked past, and she was writing on her sign, "My parents got kidnapped by pigeons." And I walked by, and I couldn't read any more of it. But I wanted to turn around and go, if you're that creative, start writing a book. Maybe you could be famous instead of homeless. My parents got kidnapped by pigeons. I
That's
loved
an
it.
awesome book title.
I thought
That's
it.
brilliant.
I thought that was like, oh,
Okay.
she needs to write.
I've got a fun little fact that
Okay.
Joe mentioned some people making seven figures, self-publishing. I never made seven figures, but I will tell y'all this is fun. My last royalty check came to me in 2007, and I used it to buy Mojo.
Her dog.
My little dog, who you all know has been on the show.
Hey, there's nothing more fun than mailbox money, so get
Yes, that paper Mojo.
side hustles.
There you go.
Side
That's
hustles,
right.
Kathleen.
Yep.
Side hustles.
Yep.
And
Do you have a
so,
website where they can go kind of follow your story?
yes, you can go to the best place really for that part. You can always go to MichelleMinistries.com, and Michelle's 2 L's.
Ask God.
Yeah.
Do you have a quote for us, or health tip first?
Quick health tip, and it
Yeah.
goes right along with something Kit Kat said, and that's she said, here we are at Grumpy's awesome bookstore, and where everything, she even mentioned that you can actually touch the books, feel them, open them. I'm going to encourage everybody, put down the Netflix.
Yes.
Put down, give your shows a little break and curl up with a book. I started doing this last night, and I loved it. Can't wait for tonight. But yes, curl up with a real book and
Even
spend
if
some
you're
time
not reading it, even if it's what do you call it? I
Kindle.
started to say a voice book.
Kindle?
Yeah.
No,
Audio
but where you're
book.
listening, lay down and
Audiobook.
rest and listen to a story too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I
I'm
love
tangible.
that.
I like feeling.
Well, look, and Grumpy's has
Yes.
this fabulous couch that'll fit at least 4.
Hey, and listen,
curl up on the sofa.
bring your old books. He will
Yeah.
buy them from you if there's something that he needs.
Absolutely.
Do you have a quote?
Well, I did. I had a really nice quote, but just sitting here and listening to everyone's story took me on a whole different path. And I've always thought I wanted to write and have always been afraid. And so my quote is just very simple. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
There you go.
And unless you put yourself out there and put pen to paper or just sit down and start writing, you just will never gain. You have to take the action.
That's right.
So I'm speaking to myself, but
Yes.
that's what's on my heart.
That's a great point.
And
If
we're
you
all
never
going to be going to your
Yes.
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 Yeah, we'll go to her
Your
writing thing.
workshop.
So,
Yes.
yeah, just get started. It won't
Yes.
happen if you don't get started. Joe,
That's
any
right.
final words? Because all your wisdom.
the only male.
Joe's a huge mentor to some of us because
Yes.
we learned a lot from him.
Estrogen zone here. Yes.
Yes. Hey, here's something that I always learn from Joe, and I'll end the show with it. Have a mindset of abundance, not a mindset of scarcity.
There you go. That's
Oh
That's
my
a good Joe
goodness.
Hafner quote.
That's a Joe
A
Hafner.
Joe quote.
That's where I heard it from. Okay, y'all have a great week. Thank you to our Joe Hafner. Go get Rooster's Leap. We've got Michelle Moore. She's got a lot of books. Go to her website. And we got Rebeccca, who's is no longer available, but she's still awesome.
See y'all next week.
Soar.
Soar.